to me, I don't care. I'm not saying fuck you in person to your eyes, to your face. It's that. It's a phenomenon of the internet.
Okay,
it's just
you're exactly right, because in sociology, I learned about this in sociology when I was studying sociology in college. We went over this, and it's called. It's a process of de-individualization, and the anonymity that the internet provides lets people say and do things they normally wouldn't do in as an individual on an individual person to level. Now this same phenomenon applies to people when they're in groups. That's why you'll see when people riot, they do it in groups. You're not going to see one person riot. That person that does that alone. If it was a single person, that guy is called like an arsonist or an anarchist, like not an anarchist, but like a he's given a specific code, a law enforcement code, a 401 whatever. I don't know what the law enforcement code is for destruction of property, and he's hauled off to jail for perpetuating a destruction of property or violence, an assault against an individual. But when people get in groups, or they are afforded any kind of groups afford anonymity because it becomes like a group think. It becomes a group process where people are able to voice their opinion, and they feel more safe because there's a safety in numbers, and they feel like their voice isn't going to be as targeted because they are a member. They are surrounded by all these people that think like them. Again, I'm going to get into these identity politics, this subject. I haven't even gotten to that yet, and I'm going to talk more about that, elaborate more on that. And that is a problem. The fact that it is a phenomenon that people feel de-individualized and feel like they can say and do whatever they want to doesn't excuse the fact that they say and do these things. When certain Nazi leaders were put on trial for war crimes, they tried to say, I was only following orders. It wasn't my fault that I exterminated all these Jewish people, and I ripped out their gold teeth, and I took all their belongings, and I created a nice plush house for myself, and I situated myself in their mansion. Like, I was just following orders. That doesn't change the fact that you took a human being and you stripped them naked, you separated them from their family members, you forced them to work in forced labor camps with very little food or water, starving them to death, and when they outlived their usefulness, you didn't just shoot them, and you would line them up in a line, and so you would get the most amount of kills for your bullet. They didn't want to just waste one bullet on an individual. These people had no value for human life, so much for human life, to the point where they would use one bullet to kill 3 people, and then have them stand in a line and shoot 3 people in a row. These people need to be held accountable for their actions. Just because they're a part of a military organization, they received orders. Just because they're a part of a group and they were rioting in the streets. Just because they're sitting behind a computer screen and a fucking keyboard, it doesn't excuse the right to dox people, to send them death threats, and to say they're going to sexually assault and attack these people, regardless of the stupidity of that person's argument. If I'm a jackass, I might call negative attention to myself, and I have called a negative attention to myself, and people have called me out on that, and people have harassed me for those things that I've done in my past, or present, or future, or whatever, and people want to slander me. That doesn't excuse the fact that that what they're saying is wrong, and they should be held accountable for that. Here on Twitch, we have the ability to, or it's just in this Discord chat, I can ban you. I can boot you out. I can prevent you from ever joining the server under this name, and I can screen your call. So there are safeguards in place to protect this kind of speech. However, on YouTube, that's not readily apparent. So if someone were to get a hold of your information, if someone were to threaten you, they could do so, and they would suffer very little, if any, at all, recourse for their actions. And these people, we're perpetuating a society of acceptance where we're just saying, well, it's okay, it's just how things are, it's just we got to deal with it. It's either we have no regulations on this, and we keep freedom of speech intact and let people have what they want to say, or we systematically oppress people and oppress those that say what they want to say, and we police them. Now, it is a very fine line that needs to be walked. In my opinion, I feel like that fine line. We need some regulation. It goes the same thing if you want to talk about like environmentalism. People say like, natural gas is great because it's not as harmful to the environment. People are like, well, natural fracking poisons the water supply. We're like, oh, you're just a crazy environmentalist. We don't need regulations for fracking because it's safe and effective, and we're providing cleaner energy because we can burn gas instead of oil or petroleum products, and this is way cleaner, and this prevents the environment. What if you're poisoning water supply? So by during the Industrial Revolution, there was a rampant deregulatory process where corporations and individuals had no regulation whatsoever. Workers weren't compensated appropriately. You had people losing fingers and expected to continue working that whole day, and they weren't paid an adequate wage, and they were forced to work 10, 20-hour work days or whatever you want to say. It's that kind of feeling that you say we can't have any regulation. That is you need to have some kind of regulation. There needs to be some kind of discipline for those people saying those things, because it's not acceptable. And the people that are sociopathic, that do go out and commit these actions, we need to have some kind of process to be able to screen people, to understand mental illness, or these people that are going to go out and perpetuate these violent crimes. And it doesn't take much, because as we've seen from riots here in Ferguson, just in Missouri, if you were to go to Missouri, over the killing of an unarmed black kid, or in Florida with George Zimmerman, you'll see more of that. You see people that are pissed off because there's very little regulation of law enforcement, and you have people saying, well, law enforcement needs the right to be able to make those decisions themselves. But people are saying it's not fair. Law enforcement should be held accountable. And now we have body cams, which seems to be an acceptable measure for both sides. It provides actual evidence of actual offense and of police brutality or an abuse of power. I felt like that was an appropriate response to the situation. Now, tearing down your community, burning your fucking community in the name of like social progression, I don't know how that progresses your social agenda or tries to further the conversation on race issues here in America, and it doesn't help the situation. The same thing on internet. You can't just say that we can't, in my opinion, I don't think it's constructive to say that these people can say and do whatever they want to without recourse, and because we're creating a society of acceptance that it is okay to say shit like this, and people are just supposed to turn off the computer. Like, yes, somebody has control of their laptop. They can shut it. They can close out their accounts. Should they? Then their voices are being stifled because they don't feel safe. Well, somebody told me when I got into a political argument here online with an individual on Facebook. This individual was saying that all Muslims were bad. They're all terrorists. We should just essentially what this is. Okay, this is an exaggeration. This is kind of like a stereotype version of what he was saying. He was essentially saying that I don't feel bad. He was essentially saying I don't feel bad for persecution of Muslims because they in the Quran it teaches them that they should. And Beto can actually speak for this because he was part of that argument. Beto's in the chat. He saw some of that argument. This individual was saying that Muslim in the Quran teaches acceptance for murder and sexual abuse and all these things. He's making all these allegations, and he was saying that like terrorists are only bred in Muslim society. He said like Jewish terrorists 0, American terrorists 0. And then he says Muslim terrorist 2002 whatever. He posted some standard meme that was just out there that gave no factual evidence, that just had a number saying that there was supposedly 3,000 Muslim terrorists that have been accounted for or targeted, and it was because of Islam that these men and women were terrorists. But somehow there was no Jewish terrorists, there was no American terrorists. I don't know if anybody knows who's like Lee Harvey Oswald is. I would say, or the Oklahoma City bomber, or Jeffrey Dahmer. Those people did acts, or the Weather Underground. They committed acts that were meant to might have been meant as a political statement, but they also spread fear and discord into society. People were scared. People were afraid to go to college because some asshole was sitting in a tower with a rifle sniping people and murdering them while they're on their way to class. Is that right? No, it's not. And these people need to be held accountable. And going back to what had happened in that specific circumstance, I took an opposing view and merely said that Muslims aren't the only terrorists out there, and terrorist is a very subjective word to use. And there are plenty of homegrown domestic terrorists that are white or black or Asian or whatever. I don't care. It's like they're not only. My point was, it's not only Muslims are terrorists, and I think it was really ignorant for this man to say. This man then got several of his friends to threaten me and tell me, if you keep talking like that, trolls. He kept saying trolls will bleed. Trolls will bleed. You think You think there are no kind of consequences to your actions. There's no consequences to your actions. I know where you live. I know where you live. He kept saying that. I know who your family is. This is a guy I went to church with. This is a Mormon guy I went to church with who was saying these things, who is threatening me in a very real way. And his friend was saying, I've been to prison. I'm not afraid to go back to prison. I will find you. Now, he just said, I will find you. He never said what he was going to do, but that scared me. That I immediately wanted to go look out my window. Oh shit, what did I just start with these people? Like, I was so pissed off about how their stupidity of their arguments that I started trolling these people, and they got so mad about it that they were subtly threatening my life and my family. And this person was saying, well, I never made these claims. I called the sheriff's department, and I filed a police report with the sheriff's department of what happened, and said, just so you know, just in case something happens to me, I have angered these people online, and I wanted to have an actual documented case of this, just in case anything was to happen. And then I had to go online and tell these people, okay, this has gotten way out of hand. This original, what was meant to be a discussion, has turned into an argument. Then an argument turned into a troll fest. I think this is wrong, and I am filing a police report, at which case these people understood that, oh shit, I actually don't want to go to jail, and I might have been threatening this kid, and he took it really seriously, and I probably shouldn't do that. These were grown men. These were men in their 40s and like 50s, threatening to come to my house and do something. And that I don't think that's appropriate, and I don't think that was an appropriate response to someone countering your logic with a more logical statement. So you have people on the internet making these allegations, saying, maybe it's something really stupid and really ignorant. That doesn't give people the right to send them death threats and to say, in my opinion, does not give people the right, just because they have freedom of speech, and they're supposedly protected by the freedom of speech, that they can say whatever they want to and just have no consequences for it. And you're totally right, Stepan, when you said that I am worried that regulating this kind of speech will turn into thought police, essentially. And if you haven't done anything, technically you're not incriminated. You've merely expressed words, and maybe you were just trolling and you were just trying to get a rise out of someone. It wasn't serious. That doesn't change the fact that. Go ahead.
It's also well, again, this is back to the system of internet that we are perpetuating. It's a fact that how to put this right. Kids, not just kids, everybody, god damn it, completely ruined my thought. The point was that the culture that we live in, especially the internet trolling culture, and this is not a good thing, as you explained, but trolling gets a response from people. That's why they continue trolling. That's what it is. It's like, it's like the kids' mentality of, please, parents, give me attention. Oh, you're not giving me good attention? I'll break something valuable. There, got attention. Same point here.
Okay,
it's just,
I wanna talk about what you just said. You said kids do things for attention, and if they're not getting positive attention, they'll do something negative to draw some kind of attention to them because they're starved for attention. Okay, what happens to those children when they act out? If a child is in class and he acts out, what happens to him? He's disciplined, is he not? At home, if I were to do something like that, do you know what happened to me? My dad would shit kick me. My dad would beat the living shit out of me. My dad did not spank me. My dad hit me. He beat me if I did not do what I was told, if I talked back, or if I acted out of line. If I broke something purposely to make a statement, he would break my fucking teeth if I were to do something like that. And my dad mellowed out a lot, and he's apologized for all that, and I don't want to paint my dad in a negative light. I love my father, and I don't have any kind of, just so everybody knows this, I appreciate how I was raised, and it taught me a lot of things that how I want to raise my kids and how I don't want to raise my kids. But that speaking, children are disciplined, and they need to be disciplined. And you can't just say, oh, it's just a natural response and we should just like let it happen. And again, it's contextual. It really is contextual. Someone that says like, your comments gave me AIDS, I'm